never got crucified. As a matter of fact, the Sinai Bible, Jesus was crucified. Well, that doesn't exist in the Sinai Bible. The Sinai Bible. The Sinai Bible. But then you go to the Sinai Bible. In the Sinai Bible and the Sinai Bible. According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. Sure, and in my videos, and if you listen to the podcast, the statement is according to the Sinai Bible, okay? According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. That Bible predates the King James Version of the Bible. And the text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came much later. And then also, one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary, which, according to some scholars, is a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified.
Refer to the Sinai Bible. Would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus? Like the codex that comes. Okay. That's why I was trying to get some clarification, because so you can actually go and see Codex Sinaiticus is at the British Library. So you can go and see it. It's on display. And the British Library has actually digitized the entire manuscript. So I work with manuscripts in my linguistic work. I'm an expert on early Christian scribal culture, and particularly in Greek and Coptic manuscripts. I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy that was done by the British Library of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office. Sinaiticus in particular is just it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up Matthew 27, where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. Confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers or listeners or whatever be able to see that?
Right now to make sure I have the version that I'm looking at.
All right, now, if it isn't clear by now, this is devastating for Billy's credibility. Billy has ran with this claim for years until Wes decides to ask Billy to pull it up online so that way they can verify it together, and then Billy says that he wants to make sure he has the right version. But I'm not even sure what he means by right version, because there's only one version, the one that Billy has referred to countless times over the last few years. And by the way, you don't have to take Wes's word for it. You can go to codexsinaiticus.org right now to view it yourself. And if you do, you'll find that it's virtually exact to the Bible that we have today, which is why you won't find a single scholar on the planet that agrees with Billy or has any idea what he's talking about here. So now that Billy is really in the hot seat, let's hear how he responds.
I'm just curious, the Sinai Bible, where was that piece discovered?
I found the text where I was referencing, actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
The Gospel of Barnabas is a really interesting document because it is a known forgery. And so that's why I think it's important to get to these sources. So at the very start of the Gospel of Barnabas, which we only have 2 copies of, one is in Italian and one is in Spanish, we see right off the bat that the Gospel of Barnabas, not to be confused with either the Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are 2 apocryphal documents from the 2nd century, but the Gospel of Barnabas in particular, we know it's a forgery because there are internal problems with the Gospel of Barnabas, which indicate that it shows no actual indication of evidence of coming from or even having knowledge of 1st century Jewish understanding. It actually says Jesus is the Christ, but not the Messiah, which indicates that whoever the author is, he didn't know that those were the same words. And I think a bigger problem is that the Gospel of Barnabas actually paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. So there's a lot of internal evidences that disqualify the Gospel of Barnabas, never mind the fact that we don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century. Or it also refers to a rule of the time of Jubilee which was changed in the Middle Ages from what it was in the biblical year of Jubilee. And it goes with the Middle Ages concept, not the ancient concept. So I think what I'm getting at is, so I'm a historian.
Yep.
And I deal with sources. So when I'm looking at sources, I want to make sure that I have a methodology by which I approach any type of source. Codex Sinaiticus, that's in the 4th century. Now that is, I would agree with you, Billy, our oldest copy of the Bible in the sense of cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation copy of the Bible.
Right.
The problem is that we have individual copies of all 4 Gospels going back hundreds of years before Codex Sinaiticus.
The first piece of evidence that Billy gave in support of his claim that Jesus was never crucified was based on the claim that these books came before the King James Bible and didn't include the crucifixion. But the actual biblical texts that our Bibles are based on, they reference the crucifixion and go back to the 2nd century. So that means it's impossible for Billy to be correct about this, since he cites the Sinai Bible that goes back to the 4th century and does reference the crucifixion, and the Book of Barnabas is more than 1,000 years later than the biblical manuscripts that we have, and it wasn't even written in Greek, but instead Italian and Spanish, and by the way, it was a proven forgery.
With this particular manuscript, I can just show the screen right here. This is an almost complete copy of the Gospel of John. Just like, it's not that there's debate about it, it's that it's a known forgery. I mean, no one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than...
If you say it's a known forgery, yes, but I'm going to go with that. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit.
Wait, so his response was, if you say it's a forgery, I'm going to go with that? Now, if Billy really is one
of the foremost world leader in the knowledge on ancient texts and tablets, scriptures, papyruses, and cylinders,
then we would expect to at least hear some response to what Wes said, tried to move to the Old Testament, but Wes wasn't going to let him off the hook that easily. He wanted to make sure that they first discussed Billy's final piece of evidence that he gave in support of his claim, and that evidence was Jesus had a wife.
If you say it's a known forgery, yes, but I'm going to go with that. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit and leading up into the New Testament.
Hold on, because do you mind if I address the Gospel of Jesus' wife?
Sure, go ahead.
What was her name?
Yeah,
I'm like trying to write notes like I know what I'm doing, but I'm just curious.
So the Gospel of Jesus' wife doesn't actually mention. So oftentimes what happens is that the text of the Gospel of Jesus' wife is kind of paralleled with the Gospel of Philip, which mentions that that Jesus would kiss Mary Magdalene on the mouth. And so those are kind of used in parallel to kind of for this argument. So the Gospel of Jesus' wife is in the Harvard Library. However, the reason we know it's also not legitimate is because even though the manuscript, the papyrus that it's on, was carbon dated to the 4th century, the text was actually copied from a PDF version of the Gospel of Thomas known as Grandin's Interlinear. And there was a mistake in the Coptic text of Grandin's Interlinear that was copied into the Gospel of Jesus' wife. So we know that this is not a legitimate document, even though the papyrus is ancient, and this happens a lot with forgeries. I have a couple of friends who have actually worked on projects that have revealed forgeries within Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts and within other ancient Christian papyri. But the reason why we know the Gospel of Jesus' wife, and that Karen King, who kind of vouched for it and she lost a lot of credibility, unfortunately, for her, and she's admitted that it's a fake as well, was because we can tie it directly to not copying from an ancient text, but actually copying from an online version of the Gospel of Thomas in a PDF form. And the mistake on that PDF form was copied into the text that was borrowed in the phraseology of Jesus' wife. So I just point that out is, once again, with our sourcing, I think we need to make sure that we're going towards not just early sources, but actually credible sources. And unfortunately, neither the Gospel of Barnabas nor the Gospel of Jesus' wife are credible sources in terms of actually, and agreed upon by not just the vast majority of scholarship, but I don't know anybody in the field of papyrology, paleography, historiography, who actually refers to these documents as being legitimate.
That's fair enough. I can respect that.
Lastly, he appeals to the gospel of Jesus' wife, which was actually just a small fragment that was a proven forgery. And to make matters worse, Billy didn't have a sufficient rebuttal to any of these claims. So at this point in the debate, Wes has successfully refuted every claim that Billy made with facts that anyone watching this video can easily go verify. So now we're all starting to see why Billy worked so hard to keep this video off of the internet. Livestream was supposed to expose the fake debate that he recently took part in, but quickly spiraled into disaster. He started by announcing lawsuits against everyone involved, the host, the opponent, and even the editor. But it wasn't long before his fans started turning on him in droves. They were furious that he wouldn't admit to an obvious loss.
I always tell you guys in all the podcasts that I'm in, don't believe what I say, research what I say. Everyone's entitled to gain or find their own opinion.
Just admit where you went wrong. Stick to the Anunnaki pyramid stuff, and I will still be a fan, but no more calling ourselves God, cause there's really only one. Sorry if it feels too on your face. Now go actually study and verify information before repeating it. Billy, you could have been a great science fiction writer. It's not too late.
So Billy responded to this debate on a video on his YouTube channel, which we can now see has been made private, once again highlighting the hilarious fact that the only forbidden knowledge in Billy's world is when the information exposes his lies. How does Billy get so sick?
I tell people I am God, and God is me. They were all God.
We're all God.
This letter said, I don't want you to use my name or my face in anything going forward, and anything you've used up until this point you need to remove.